Not every monster looks the part. Some smile at you from across the street, share coffee with you, tuck their kids in at night, all while hiding a darkness you can't imagine. Today, we're pulling back the mask on 4 women who turn trust into terror, and their crimes will chill you to the bone. Imagine someone you know, someone who seems harmless, a friend, a neighbor, even a sister, secretly capable of unthinkable evil. These are the stories of women who shattered every stereotype and proved that when it comes to crime, there's no such thing as a safe face. Stay with me until the end, because some of these twists will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about human nature. Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo appear to be a picture-perfect couple in Ontario, Canada. But between 1990 and 1992, they committed some of the most disturbing crimes the country had ever seen. On December 23, 1990, Karla drugged her 15-year-old sister, Tammy, with halothane, stolen from the veterinary clinic where she worked. This allowed Paul to assault Tammy while Karla watched and filmed parts of the attack. Tammy died that night, choking on her own vomit, and the couple staged it as an accident. Only months later, on June 15, 1992, they kidnapped 14-year-old Leslie Mahaffey after she missed curfew and was locked out of her home. Karla lured Leslie into their house under the pretense of letting her make a phone call. Once inside, she was blindfolded, chained, and brutally assaulted for 24 hours. After murdering her, they dismembered her body with a circular saw, encased the remains in concrete, and dumped them in Lake Gibson. Less than a year later, on April 16, 1992, the couple abducted 15-year-old Kristen French in broad daylight outside a church in St. Catharines. Kristen was forced into their car at knife point, then taken home where she endured 3 days of degradation and torture. She was strangled on Easter Sunday, and her body was left in a ditch, her hair hacked off to delay identification. Karla and Paul were finally caught in 1993 after DNA linked Paul to a series of rapes in Scarborough. Karla, fearing a long sentence, struck a deal with the prosecutors. She pleaded guilty to 2 counts of manslaughter in exchange for a 12-year sentence. She painted herself as an abused and battered wife, manipulated into participating. This narrative was accepted until videotapes were discovered later that showed her willingly and enthusiastically participating in the torture and killings. During the trial, victim impact statements from Leslie's and Kristen's families painted the courtroom in grief. Kristen's mom described waking up every day hoping it was all a nightmare. Leslie's father spoke through tears, saying he could never look at a lake the same way again. A judge later called Karla's actions inexcusable and shocking, yet upheld the plea deal, stating his hands were tied. The public's reaction was swift and enraged. The deal became known as the deal with the devil. When the videotape surfaced, after the deal had been signed, many called for it to be revoked, but the law protected Karla. Would you have ever suspected a woman like Karla to be capable of this level of cruelty? Let me know in the comments. If you thought Karla's story was horrifying, wait until you hear about the Florida killer who turned highways into hunting grounds, leaving fear, bodies, and unanswered questions in her wake. Between December 1989 and November 1990, Aileen Wuornos murdered 7 men along Florida Highway. Her first known victim, Richard Mallory, was a 51-year-old electronics store owner found shot 4 times near Daytona Beach. Over the next 11 months, David Spears, Charles Carskadone, Troy Boras, Peter Seams, Dick Humphreys, and Walter Antonio met similar fates, each shot multiple times, their bodies dumped in isolated areas. Aileen claimed she acted in self-defense after clients tried to assault her while she worked as a sex worker. But prosecutors revealed evidence suggesting robbery and premeditation played a major role. Aileen's arrest on January 9, 1991, followed a lengthy investigation. She had been caught on a security camera pawning items belonging to her victims, including Mallory's radar detector and a watch engraved with initials. Police also discovered a palm print on a stolen car that matched hers. Her lover at the time, Tyria Moore, made a deal with investigators. She would coax a confession from Aileen in exchange for immunity. Over several recorded phone calls, Aileen broke down and admitted to the murders. Her trial in 1992 became a media frenzy. Psychiatric experts debated her mental state, and Aileen, often volatile in court, fired her attorneys multiple times. At one point, she shouted at the judge and accused her lawyers of selling her out. Despite claims of mental illness and PTSD stemming from childhood trauma, the prosecution emphasized the cold, consistent methods Aileen used. Her ability to lure men, shoot them, and take their belongings. During sentencing, relatives of the victims gave emotional testimony. One family member asked, "What gave you the right to play God with someone else's life?" Aileen showed no visible remorse. She was ultimately sentenced to death for 6 of the 7 murders. Her appeals were exhausted quickly, and Aileen even requested that her execution be expedited, stating she wanted to get right with God. By the time of her execution on October 9, 2002, her case had sparked multiple documentaries and a critically acclaimed film, Monster, starring Charlize Theron. The public was divided. Some saw her as a monster, others as a tragic product of abuse, homelessness, and neglect. In her final statement, she chillingly declared, "Yes, I would just like to say I'm sailing with the rock, and I'll be back like Independence Day with Jesus, June 6th, like the movie. Big mothership and all, I'll be back." Do you think Aileen was a victim of circumstances or a cold-blooded killer? Share your thoughts below. When people talk about the violent rise of the cocaine trade in Miami during the 1970s and 80s, one name always comes up: Griselda Blanco, known as the Black Widow and the godmother of cocaine. Blanco was one of the most ruthless drug lords the world has ever seen. Born in Colombia, she immigrated to the United States and quickly carved out a reputation for herself in the underworld. What made Blanco stand out wasn't just the scale of her operation. It was the sheer brutality she used to keep her power. She ordered assassinations without hesitation, sometimes against rivals, other times against her own associates or even her romantic partners. Stories about her include having husbands mysteriously killed, earning her the infamous name Black Widow. Blanco's empire stretched across Miami, New York, and beyond, moving billions of dollars in cocaine. At the height of her reign, she was considered untouchable, fueling the violent cocaine cowboy era that left Miami drenched in blood. Drive-by shootings, executions in broad daylight, and entire families wiped out, all linked back to her network. Eventually, the law caught up with her. Blanco was arrested and served nearly 2 decades in U.S. prisons before being deported back to Colombia. But even in prison, her legend only grew. Some saw her as a symbol of female dominance in a male-dominated world of organized crime. Others saw her as nothing more than a cold-blooded killer who left a trail of destruction behind her. In 2012, years after she had stepped out of the spotlight, Blanco was assassinated in Medellin. Fittingly, she was gunned down in a drive-by shooting, the very method of violence she had once popularized. Griselda Blanco remains a chilling reminder that crime empires don't always fall apart because of police work or justice. They often collapse under the same violence they unleashed on others. Was Griselda a criminal mastermind, or just another symbol of the chaos she created? We've seen how empires of violence can collapse under their own chaos. But what happens when the darkness isn't in the streets? It's sitting quietly at a desk beside you, hiding in plain sight until the day it explodes. On February 12, 2010, faculty members gathered for a routine biology department meeting at the University of Alabama in Huntsville. Nothing seemed unusual until one professor, Amy Bishop, quietly pulled out a 9mm handgun and opened fire on her colleagues. Within minutes, 3 professors were dead and 3 others lay seriously wounded. The attack shocked the academic world. Bishop was no hardened criminal. She was a Harvard-educated biology professor, a mother of 4, and by all outward appearances, someone devoted to her career and family. But investigators soon learned her life was filled with troubling incidents that foreshadowed the violence. Decades earlier, in 1986, Amy had fatally shot her 18-year-old brother with a shotgun in what was ruled an accident at the time. Questions lingered for years about whether the shooting was truly unintentional, but no charges were filed. In 1993, she was also questioned in connection with a pipe bomb sent to a Harvard professor's home, though no charges were brought. To many, these past incidents looked like glaring red flags that had been ignored. The motive for the 2010 shooting became clearer in the days that followed. Amy had recently been denied tenure at the university, a devastating blow to her career. Colleagues later testified that she had a history of volatile behavior, angry outbursts, and thinly veiled threats. During the trial, prosecutors painted her as someone who believed she was intellectually superior and entitled to success, yet lashed out when reality proved otherwise. In court, survivors and family members of the victims delivered heartbreaking testimony. One widow described the moment she told her children their father would never come home again. Another victim's son said he could never walk into a classroom without remembering what his mother endured. Amy Bishop showed little remorse, often deflecting blame. In 2012, she pleaded guilty to capital murder and attempted murder charges to avoid the death penalty. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She is currently serving her sentence in Julia Tutwiler Prison for Women in Alabama. The case remains a chilling example of how sudden rage and resentment can simmer for years, only to erupt in a single moment of devastating violence. How do you think Amy's earlier warning signs were missed? And could this tragedy have been prevented if authorities acted sooner? These stories prove one thing: evil doesn't have a gender. Sometimes, the most dangerous people are the ones you trust most. Each of these women planned, deceived, and carried out their crimes with a level of ruthlessness that shocked entire communities and shattered the myth that only men mastermind true evil. So here's my question to you. Are female criminals portrayed fairly, or are their stories twisted by stereotypes? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more deep dives into these chilling stories, hit the subscription button because you don't want to miss what's coming up next.